Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to our video here. It's good to have you here. And are we broadcasting? Can you guys see and hear me okay? Just let me know if you guys can see and actually hear me okay. You should be able to see me and hear me okay. We are up and running here on this special video today. It is, of course, Friday, October the 30th, which will forever go down in the history books. They'll learn about this in school as the day of The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1, the premiere finally dropped, and we're going to talk about it in a complete open spoiler environment here today. So guys, if you have not seen Season 2, Episode 1 of The Mandalorian yet, now is a good time for you to step away because we are going to talk about all the things. And if you guys want to fire in a question or a comment about the show, just go ahead and use the super chat feature that's in the live YouTube thing there, and we will get to it. And I am not alone today. Actually, I've got one guest, sort of, but really, in a way, two guests joining me for this Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1 spoiler discussion. We, of course, have Anne, and we've got Baby Yoda here with us. Anne, why is Baby Yoda here?
Hi, everyone. We're not talking about The Mandalorian? Are we talking about how awesome I am?
Yes, okay. We're talking about both. Both The Mandalorian and how awesome you are. What do you got there?
This Baby Yoda?
Yes.
It's the real Baby Yoda.
Tell everybody about it. Tell people what it does.
This toy actually is produced by my former company, and
now you're not doing that. This is it's not a puppet. It does it all on its own.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's so cute.
I love that thing.
Yes, this is our co-host.
Our co-host for today. Okay, guys, we are going to talk about Mandalorian, everything that happened into it. And here we go. And then Anne and I are going to talk about it first for a few minutes, and then we're just going to spend really the majority of the show just taking the comments and questions you guys are sending in to talk about. First off, show starts really just like Season 1 started. Because, like, if you remember, Anne, there was in Season 1, Episode 1, it starts with Mando showing up at this cantina, and an action sequence breaks out where he captures the one guy and takes him on his ship and freezes him. And then we never saw the guy again, although we are probably going to see him in Season 2. Episode 1, Season 2 starts the same way. He comes into this town, he goes to the local MMA fights with Gamorrean guards fighting in there, has a big action sequence that kind of sets him off on his journey and where he's going. And of course, they put that scene that we saw in the trailer with when he's surrounded and he brings out the singing birds.
Oh yeah.
And Baby Yoda slams the thing.
So, let's not forget how deadly the Mandalorian is.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of stuff that was, I felt like they started off the show with a lot of stuff that was in the trailers.
Right. Which
was pretty cool. So that whole opening was great. That's still, and I like the fact that they kind of remind us that Mando is still a killer. Mm-hmm. I mean, so he captures the guy after he does this whole, wired thing, wraps up his legs and pulls him in, and he leaves him for dead. Like, he leaves him to die. So, I mean, he had it coming. The dude had it coming, but it was kind of vicious. I mean, what did you like about that? What stands out to you about that big opening scene?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it just brings you back in, right? And I feel like a lot of shows, they feel like they have to just start with this, either start where they left off, in essence, that last scene with the Darksaber and kind of started there, but it was like he just moved on. This is his next journey, and I really like that they let us remember how deadly the Mandalorian is, but now in tow with Baby Yoda,
right,
every step of the way.
So I mean, then he progresses on. He goes back to Tatooine. He reminds us, or he at least lets us know that he has spent a lot of time. It's good that early they told us, I've spent a lot of time on Tatooine.
Yeah.
Because if he didn't say that, when he gets to Tatooine and all of a sudden can speak Tusken,
right?
Can all of a sudden magically speak Tusken, that wouldn't have made any sense. But the fact that at the beginning he says, I've spent a lot of time at Tatooine, it's like, okay, good. Narratively, we're covered.
Right.
Now we have an excuse for why he knows how to speak Tusken. So he gets there. I had no idea. You know what? I saw him and I thought maybe we heard of this, but he runs into Timothy Olyphant.
Yep.
Who is playing his character from Deadwood, who is playing his character from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, who is playing his character from whatever else. But I don't care. I love seeing him as a Western sheriff.
Yeah.
I just thought he was great. What do you think about the Marshal?
No, 100% agree. And when he walked in, we were both, well, you were like, that's Boba Fett's armor. And I was like, it doesn't quite fit. Like, it looks really awkward on this guy's body. And then come to find out, yes, he is the Marshal of the town. I love seeing this actor. He's one of my favorites. Anything that he shows up in. Check him out in The Good Place if you haven't. He's also
that's right. I forgot he has an appearance in The Good Place.
Yes, which he's great in there too. But yeah, this is the perfect role for him. I thought he did fantastic. And I also think that this is not the first or last time we're seeing him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, oh no. I mean, look, they actually, I think the fact that they actually named the episode after him, I think that tells us we are going to be seeing him again. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that for sure. I mean, we talked about that a little bit last night. We don't know if that's the case for sure. I say last night because we stayed up until we didn't go to bed till after they aired the episode. But I got a feeling we're going to see him again at some point. And I mean, I wasn't really clear how long he was supposed to have had Boba Fett's armor.
Right.
I didn't get a good sense.
No,
because he was clearly an expert in using it, from everything from using the weaponry on it to he could fly great with it and everything. So I don't know if he's had it for a few months or a few years. Maybe you guys can fire that into the live chat if you remember if they actually made a definitive statement of how long they said he had the armor. But I thought that was great as well. One of the things I said on the show, on the John Campea Show this morning, that I loved about this episode was, John Favreau said from the beginning that this show it's a gritty, old style Western about a lone gunslinger out on the frontier.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit worried coming into season 2. I had 2 fears. I told this to Rob today. I had 2 fears. Fear number 1 was that they were going to, hey guys, Baby Yoda's really popular. Let's just always have the camera on Baby Yoda and just make it all about Baby Yoda. And they didn't do that. So that was great.
Yeah, true.
And my second fear was that they would make it more a space sci-fi epic and get away from their Western roots. But John Favreau directed the first episode of this season. And John Favreau really doubled down on reminding us, guys, this is a frontier Western. That's what this show is.
I 100%.
And they did all the tropes, all the great tropes of a real frontier Western. And it felt great. And even the whole, homage to the townsfolk versus the native folk, as an old Western would have. And they got to work together to take on this bigger threat. Yeah. So I just dug that. What stood out to you?
No,
the most
you're right. I mean, as you're talking through it, yes, that's absolutely right. And you're right. It didn't change its course based on, fan reactions or trying to service, comments that they heard off season. It really did keep to that particular tone and that particular genre. And I love the scenes like that when they're riding on is it Banthas?
Yes, Banthas.
Through the desert. I mean, that's very Western-like. To your point, I like they almost had like a duel at the beginning. Yes. It was very close. Mandalorian almost had a duel with the Marshal, so I would have loved to see that, but that didn't pan out. But there was a lot of nods to old Westerns, and I continue to enjoy. And the one thing I would say that like brings you back to, this is a Star Wars story that's in this type of genre, is the music. And it was particularly like it stood out to me in this episode, the music. I don't know if it's because maybe like the theme song kind of is what catches your ear, but in this episode, throughout the entire episode, the music really stood out. I think that that is what brings you back to knowing that this is a Star Wars story. Yeah,
and it keeps bringing you back to that. And here's one of the big things to me. One of my complaints about last year's episode where they went to Tatooine, which I thought was the worst episode of the season by far. I hate for lack of a better term, I hate nostalgia porn, where they just throw in something, go, hey, look, guys, recognize that, and there was no real reason for it to be. Right. Like, I hate that. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did that a lot in the first few seasons. Look, everybody, we're mentioning Tony Stark. Oh, he's in the MCU, And in season 1, in that episode they went to Tatooine, there was so much of that, because it's like, look, everybody, it's the same spaceport from Star Wars. Remember that? And look,
Right.
everybody, it's the same cantina. Ooh, isn't that great? And there was no purpose for it. And they just kept slapping you in the face with it. This time, we get Tusken Raiders and we get a Krayt dragon, but it was all woven in and made an important part of the story. There was purpose for it.
Right.
And so I found myself just really getting into it. And more than that, it was actually something like, I don't think anything Star Wars ever, other than maybe outside of some novels, have we ever got a deeper explanation into the Tusken Raiders, into the Sand People.
Right.
Right? Like we actually saw them as characters.
Right.
And I thought that was really, really neat. So
it is interesting. Much more of the lore, and they kind of pepper it in there to the point where, to your, like what you were saying, is they're not trying to blatantly be like, look at all these cool Star Wars things. Don't you recognize all these things? Yeah, very, very well like woven into the narrative. One thing that when you were talking about, like, there are limited characters in this story, and I do like that he revisits some of the characters that he's met. And I imagine he'll continue to meet, like Timothy Olyphant's character, I'm sure is going to be back.
At the
but the mechanic, yeah, like I love that, you know, he continues to come back to the people he knows and that he kind of trusts through his journey. It's nice.
Yeah, I like that part of it too. So, but there was great action sequences. They put more into the visual effects of this one episode, I feel, than they did in a lot, obviously with the Krayt Dragon itself, but also with a lot of the other things. There's pod racer references and whatever, but I mean, it's all about Boba Fett. It's all about Boba Fett, because we get to the end. And let me see if I forgot. We get to the last shot. We get to the big reveal, the last shot, as Mando is riding away with the armor, and we come to behind this one lone character, and we all know who it is before he turns around. But he turns around, and it's Temuera Morrison, who, of course, plays Aquaman's dad. But more importantly, to this context, he plays Jango Fett and obviously his clone son, Boba. This was Boba Fett. And now, look, there was a possibility, I thought, what if instead of Boba Fett, what if he's one of the clone troopers? What if he's just one of the clone troopers that's been marooned or has been in hiding, whatever, on Tatooine? Maybe he's worked with Obi-Wan at some point. I mean, I don't know. And look, IMDb is not the be-all, end-all, but IMDb itself, when you go to Morrison's IMDb page, when you get there, it does list him as Boba Fett. Now, again, that doesn't automatically mean everything, but I mean, it's Boba Fett, and everybody freaks out because it's not just a cute cameo. This is the fulfillment of 30 years of fan desire and fan speculation of, could Boba Fett have survived falling into the Sarlacc pit? Could Boba Fett have survived that? And there it is. It's now done. It's now official. He's there. He's back. And just for those people who don't remember, I mean, the Krayt Dragon is, of course, something we go all the way back to the very first Star Wars movie, as R2 and 3PO come across the Krayt Dragon skeleton out in the desert. Obviously, probably a juvenile Krayt Dragon at that point. But anyway, there it is. We got Boba Fett back. Now, when are we going to see him again? How long will it be until we see him again? I don't know. That's a good question. But listen, guys, I said we really wanted to spend most of our time here today taking your observations and seeing what you guys have to say. So let's go over and start doing that. Luke1234 writes in the first scene when Mando cable ties that guy's legs together and drags him, reminded me of the rooftop scene in 1989's Batman. It's true. It really did. But we've seen him use that thing before, and that was great. I love the fact that they decided to start off this season reminding us again, this is a Mandalorian. And he's going to, like a crowd full of thugs, try and take him out. No problem. He'll take him out, try to get away from him. He's an expert bounty hunter. You can't get away from him. He'll track you down and he'll catch you. And then if he doesn't like you, he'll leave you for dead. So I absolutely agree with you on that, Luke1234. Luke1234 also writes, Fett's jets get hit again like he did, like how Han did in episode 6. Yes, that is exactly what I thought too. Because if you guys remember back in Return of the Jedi, as Han Solo is like, Boba Fett, anyway. And of course, he slams Boba Fett's jetpack, which sends Boba Fett slamming into the sail barge and falling down in the Sarlacc pit. Essentially, that's what Mando did to the Marshal, but he did it for different reasons. He did it to save him instead of trying to throw him into a Sarlacc pit. So that's a key difference. The Jedi Brandon writes, when I saw that worm, I thought I was watching Dune. This episode was fantastic. Oh, yeah, there is very much, like, when we were watching that, there is very much a Dune sort of feel. You're out.
Yeah, I've seen that image before.
Right, like instead of Arrakis, it's out there. But again, let's not forget that it's not like Star Wars hadn't referenced this thing before. It's not like this is the first time they've ever had a Krayt dragon. Right? They have used Krayt dragons before in Star Wars stories. And again, going all the way back to that original. But you're not wrong, Jedi Brandon, when you point out the similarities to Dune and Arrakis when we see the sandworm. I mean, the spice must flow, I suppose, when you see the sandworm coming out. So yes, you are absolutely, it had that feel to it. All right. Next up, Brian Williams writes, fantastic episode. Loved everything about it, especially the size and scale of the Krayt dragon. Epic. Favreau brought it for season 2. Take care, John and Anne. I gotta say, I was not surprised they used a Krayt dragon because that's supposed to be there in Tatooine. I wasn't prepared for the scale.
It's massive.
Like at one point, I can't remember if it's the Marshal or if it's Mando when they're talking to the town people and explaining the predicament. Either Marshall or Mando says, if that thing wants to come here, it could swallow the whole town.
Right.
I mean, they really went big scale of it.
Which is interesting, right? Because it could. So why doesn't it? It's just after the banthas, really. Like, that's what it wants, is to feed. Maybe it's not really after people. But the coolest thing I thought, which I was really surprised about that dragon, is that it spits that acid.
Sorry, keep talking.
liquid.
I'm going to adjust your mic.
Yeah. The cool thing that I didn't know about is that it spits that acid liquid across, and there was a lot more deaths in this episode than I expected. I mean, and it wasn't even because of Mando, it was really because of this dragon.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yep. The acid spit was something I wasn't ready for.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing.
Listen, they might have covered it. You guys might know this better. But I don't recall in any of the writings, in any of the canon stuff, or even in the non-canon stuff, references to that. If you guys know that at some point somewhere in Star Wars lore that's written in there, but that was something about the Krayt dragon that just made it even more terrifying, as if they needed to make it more terrifying. Okay, next up, where are we at now? We're at Orange Hand, who writes, this episode reminded me of the first Knights of the Old Republic game where you lured the Krayt dragon from the cave and blew it up. I totally forgot about that, by the way. You can use the pearl as a saber crystal. You know what?
That's why they made emphasis to it. That makes sense.
I totally whiffed on that. Because I thought, okay, going back to the whole thing, Jawas love the eggs of the monster.
Yeah.
I remember looking at it, I think that's awfully small for an egg. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, makes sense.
That was, dude, that's the Orange Hand. That's the did you know comment of the day. That's the did you know comment of the day. Well said. All right, Josh Bing writes, am I the only one who noticed the aspect? Oh, no, you weren't. I noticed this too. Am I the only one who noticed that the aspect ratio changed?
Oh, it's so good.
When the Leviathan attack sequence began. No cinematic black bars. It was over. Amazing episode. Where did it go? Streaming may just be the future of Star Wars. Yes, there was something, and again, that was very Western. Mm-hmm. I've seen Westerns where they kind of do that before, and that was really great. I mean, it was hard to not notice because it's right there on the screen. But did you notice it as you were watching live?
I did. That's exactly one of the things I would point out is, I don't know if I wish I could have rewatched season 1, but if that was prevalent in season 1, but
I don't remember it being in season 1.
It's showing the growth of our John Favreau and Dave Filoni working together on this
Could be, but yes, that was a really cool thing, Josh. I mean, that was a really exceptionally cool thing. One of many cool things that they did in that episode. All right, let's see. Next up, we got the Jedi Brandon, who writes, love how Jon Favreau shot the Krayt Dragon fight in IMAX. I mean, yeah, again, moving from that what we standard known as the television broadcast, then there's the kind of cinematic broadcast, and he went really extra hyper wide on that, which I thought was great. I really did. All right, next up, Giancarlo P writes, I felt like the characters, including Mandalorian, explained to the audience what was going on a bit too many times. Even when it was visually clear what was happening, it started becoming a bit distracting. Here's what I would say to that, Giancarlo, is that if you watch the old spaghetti westerns, that's exactly what they did. I mean, there was always exposition going on. There was always exposition going on. It's funny. I was a guest on a podcast yesterday, and we were talking about Unforgiven, and that's another one where there's a lot of exposition going on, right? And so you're not wrong in your observation, Giancarlo P, about that at all. You're not incorrect about that observation in the least. But to me, it just fit. I didn't find it became a distraction. I personally found like it just made it fit with everything that was going on. Did you find the dialogue or whatever them kind of explain vision? Did you ever find that distracting?
It's interesting he asked that question because there was one moment of the episode, and I'm trying to recall it as you were talking, that I thought the same thing. It's like, oh, Mando didn't have to say that again. We know what the plan is. They're going to go try to kill the Krayt dragon. But I think it was in that moment that I realized, I think they've said this like 3 times already in this episode. But so far, it hasn't bothered me that much.
I will say this, though. So as the plan is unfolding and they're trying to lure the Krayt dragon out so they can blow up the explosives underneath it, right? So Timothy Olyphant, the marshal's standing there and goes, I'm going to blow it now. And Mando's like, no, we've only got one shot at this. I'm like, really? You've only got one shot? Because you got a whole nother bantha over there completely loaded with more explosives. You sure you only got one shot at this? Shouldn't you maybe the first one would have worked when they blew it up underneath the crate. Maybe it would have worked if they had buried all the charges because they still had a lot of... Anyway, that's just one kind of thing that stood out to me a little bit. All right, let's move on here. A. Cullen writes, when Mando was taken aback by Boba Fett, I like that, by Boba Fett removing his helmet, I cracked up so hard, which made me wonder how he would react to Sabine or Bo-Katan. Yeah, I was kind of waiting for that because we knew that wasn't Boba Fett, but that was clearly Boba Fett's armor. So the way whoever the actor was in that, I don't believe for a second it was Pedro Pascal actually in the Mandalorian armor. He's not actually on set 80% of the time, but whoever was doing the body acting in that, when after Timothy Olyphant sits down and he's reaching for his helmet, just without seeing Mando's face.
Amazing, right?
The way they physically kind of communicated startle.
Yep.
Like, what, dude, what are you doing? Why are you taking off your helmet? It's like, okay, you're not a man.
How do they do that? It's still, it's the same way I look at Funko Pops and I'm like, how did they get that person's expression with 2 dots and like 1 dash?
With 1 shape of the face and a couple of, what? That looks exactly like Rainn Wilson. How does that look like Rainn Wilson?
Same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that scene was, the way they pulled that off, and the camera angle of it and everything, just, it was absolutely beautifully shot. Okay, next up, we've got Jordan R. writes, this is the way to make Star Wars great again. Great show. Yeah, what they've been doing with... Here's what I especially love about Mandalorian is Star Wars has done some great stuff over the past number of years. Rogue One, I think, is awesome. I love The Force Awakens. But the thing I really appreciate about Mandalorian is that it's something I've wanted Star Wars to do for a long, long time. Do something really different. Make it Star Wars in its DNA, but make it really different. Do something different. Let's get away from all the characters we know and blah, blah, blah. And this is such a different kind of show. Like it's a Western. It's this lone gunfighter. There's this smaller scale feel to it. Even though we've got a Yoda species Force user in it, still, it's a smaller scale feel kind of thing. Small town. It reminds me, Rob mentioned this morning too, reminds me of season 1, that episode where he wanders onto that planet with the local villagers who are trying to fight off the raiders, and he meets the woman that was hot for him, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I appreciate it so much. So not only are they putting together some really good stories, they're doing it in a really different way than what we normally associate with Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I like that. If you had to say something about Mandalorian overall, now that we've seen season 2, episode 1, that stands out to you, that makes it really work for you, what would you say it is?
I think it's the consistency. I think it's, to your point, like they haven't strayed from the narrative to try to do any fan service or try to throw Star Wars in your face or Baby Yoda in your face. Like they've stayed consistent to, this is a story about the Mandalorian and his journey. And the only other time I ever felt like it was kind of how you're describing, like a Star Wars story, but outside of your typical narrative, was Rogue One. And even then, Rogue One was on a grander scale, but it gave you a glimpse into the lives of folks who live in this universe that are not your Rey or your Luke or whoever, you know, those characters that we've all grown to love. So they've really kept this to being about the Mandalorian, and I appreciate that they do that, and it's been consistent so far in this first episode.
Yeah, again, I was a little bit worried they would give into the temptation. Hey guys, look how many Baby Yoda toys are being sold. Look how popular Baby Yoda is. We got to focus more on Baby Yoda. Nope, this show is still called The Mandalorian, and they're focusing on him with the obligatory every 3 minutes quick camera shot of Baby Yoda.
Yeah,
for everybody to go, oh.
Well, it's just enough. It's just enough.
You let out a few ahs.
Yeah, but again, it's not so overbearing. Like he's there. Yeah. He's a character there. They're showing his reaction when they need to, but it goes back to, this is about the Mandalorian. I'm very, very curious though, in terms of all of the what people are spectating as like characters that will show up in the season, if that will cloud the narrative in any way, but hopefully not.
But I got somebody asking in the live chat, how much does that Baby Yoda cost?
I think it was like $60.
60?
Yeah. That's
a little cheaper than that, especially with all the movement and the animatronics in it.
Well, folks, I haven't even shown John this. There is a $350 HasLab, I forget what the vehicle is called, but it's the one that Mandalorian and Baby Yoda are in. That is like this big. I've been eyeing.
Ship, like Mandalorian,
yes.
The Razor Crest?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Can
you still get your Hasbro discount on that toy? You still can? Because Ann doesn't work at Hasbro anymore, so. Okay, sorry. So we got more questions to get to. Now I'm all excited. I want to know. I want to know more about this. Okay, Senior Film writes, love the return of the Jedi. Love the return of the Jedi homage of Boba Fett's death when Mando hits Olyphant's jetpack. Yeah, that was very well timed and very well done, and especially too, if you watch the way Marshall's like limbs flail after Mando hits his jetpack and sets it off, it's very reminiscent of the way Boba Fett flails in Return of the Jedi. So it was really well set up and very, very well done. Good observation, Senior Film. All right, Nicholas Sergi writes. Oh, I lost Nicholas Sergi. Where'd Nicholas Sergi go? There he is. Nicholas Sergi writes in. Aspect ratio changed at 40 minutes for Krayt Dragon. Yeah, we covered that a little bit ago. Again, just Jon Favreau continues to play with the toolbox. He says, what other tools do I have at my... I want to play with all these things that I loved, and he's finding a way to fit it in. And was it necessary to do the aspect change? Obviously not. It wasn't necessary, but it was fun. And sometimes fun is a good replacement for necessity. All right, Ryan Lohner writes, seems kind of like Favreau said, screw it, Tatooine is just Arrakis now, not just the sandworm, but all the stuff talking about taking our water. Well, but remember, again, we're going back to the original Star Wars. Tatooine, remember what Uncle Owen did as a profession. What was Uncle Owen and Luke doing? What was their profession? They were moisture farmers. Moisture farmers. They live on a desert world where you specifically have farms that try to extract moisture from the atmosphere. I mean, so this whole thing about the real importance of water is not something that we should take as any sort of a, oh, they just took, no, that's the world they live in. I mean, that is completely consistent with that world. But I'm not going to deny, Ryan, I also thought of Arrakis and the sandworms and Dune when we saw it for the first time. All right, James Argenta writes, fun fact, the sound of the Krayt Dragon was the production team of the show remixing this sound Alec Guinness made to scare the Tusken Raiders in episode 4. Is that true?
Oh, that's interesting.
I didn't know. So if you guys remember in the original Star Wars film, after the Tusken Raiders knock out Luke and everything, and they're going through and looting his speeder, you hear this scream from that is ultimately Obi-Wan making the sound of a Krayt Dragon to scare off the Tusken Raiders, I suppose. I got to go back and listen to it again in the new episode. It was like that. If that's true, that's a really, really cool thing they did to take that original sound and remix it to do the Krayt Dragon. And it would also, again, be consistent with what they've been doing in the show. All right. Thanks for sending that in, James. That's a really nice, neat to know fact. All right. K. Nico writes, 1, Mando befriended Cobb too fast. 2, street graffiti. Yeah, the street graffiti was great with all the stormtroopers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't think he befriended Marshall too fast. Look, he encountered him. They came to a business arrangement, and then they developed a relationship as it went. Remember, too, this is an episode of television, right? It's not like it's not like a 2.5-hour movie where you can develop this blah, blah. It's an episode of television. Specifically, it's an episode of Western television. They meet, they almost draw on each other. They develop a bit of an understanding of where each are coming from. They make an arrangement together for mutual, benefit. And then they begin their journey. And as they do, they learn to respect each other. And so I thought for a 48-minute kind of episode of television, I mean, if it was a 2.5-hour movie, maybe I would have felt that was rushed. But for understanding the context of the show, I thought it worked. What did you think about it? Yeah,
that didn't bother me. I think the character, at least the way it was written with the Marshal, was very forthcoming with information. This is what I'm about. This is what I need to have happen. And I feel like without Mando even saying it, he didn't see him as a threat. So I'm sure the trust was there like from the get-go between those two characters.
Okay, let's keep things going here. Suthius writes, "Hey guys, I enjoyed the first episode. So glad it was longer. Yeah, me too. Hope the rest will be similar. Maybe wrong of me, but I couldn't help but chuckle when he was speaking to the Tuskens with the grunting. Yeah,
that's pretty good.
But I mean, I guess that is how they communicate and how they sound. I mean, I'm not going to lie too. I was also kind of giggling, and I'll admit too, when they started with the dogs coming out, and he talks at them and he talks them down, I forgot initially about the reference that he gave at the beginning of the episode that he had spent a lot of time on Tatooine. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, so he just knows how to calm these dogs down. And then the Tusken Raiders came out, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. He mentions already he's been on Tatooine a lot. So
and it reminds us that we don't know everything about this guy still. There's just so much more to learn about him. And these little facts that they keep dropping, and you're like, huh, interesting. Like, why was he there? Like, why did he spend so much time? How did he pick up this language? So it's just little things that they pebble in is great.
He has an entire life that has happened before Mandalorian season 1, episode 1. Mm-hmm. And just because we've been with him for 1 year doesn't mean we know anything really about what he's been doing. So that's a really great point. Yeah. Okay, let's move on here. That was Suthius, I believe. Yes, it was. Okay, J Master writes, "The worm chasing Mando scene reminded me of Dune." Oh yeah, it's hard not to be. I mean, you and a lot of other people, no doubt. Again, while we completely understand that the Krayt Dragon has been referenced since the very first Star Wars, we get it. It is very, very difficult not to acknowledge that it absolutely had a Dune feel to it. And so I don't know if that was Jon Favreau even maybe intentionally trying to give it a little bit of homage to Dune. But I mean, yeah, we understand, but it still feels that way. I totally get it. All right, Michael Hoover Music writes, "Worth pointing out, the people who brought back Maul in the Clone Wars are bringing back Boba, not the people responsible for bringing Palps back, because I trust John and Dave to do it well." Yeah, I don't know if you can equate that. I don't know if you can make that equation, because really, remember, the the idea of the survival of Boba Fett, this is not something that Jon Favreau came up with. This is a fan theory that's been around a long time. Actually, if you go all the way back to Parks and Rec, all right, go all the way back to Parks and Rec, when who's the guy who does the voice of Ratatouille? Guys, I'm forgetting. Who's the guy who does the voice of Ratatouille? The comedian. Why am I freezing on his name?
Oh, Dom? No.
No, not Dom. There's a P in there. Come on, guys, in the live chat. Patton Oswalt. That's what it is. Thank you, guys. I said there's a P in there. There's a P in there, not Pattinson. So when you go all the way back, right? Like if you go to Parks and Rec in that infamous episode where Patton Oswalt is trying to do that filibuster and he's describing his ultimate Marvel Star Wars crossover.
Right.
He goes, scene, Tatooine exterior, Sarlacc pit. A lone gloved Mandalorian hand comes out of the Sarlacc pit, pulling himself out, and it is revealed to be Boba Fett. I mean, this whole notion has been around for a long time. And as much as I love Jon Favreau, let's not pretend that Jon Favreau is the one who came up with the idea, what if Boba Fett survived the Sarlacc pit? That's been around a very, very, very long time. There was even a fan film about it a little while ago. But still, it's going to be interesting to see what Favreau now says, you know, what has Boba been doing on Tatooine all these years? Why hasn't he gotten his armor back already? Clearly, he probably could have. All that kind of stuff. So it's going to be, there's still a lot of interesting story to tell. Okay, next up. Mr. Chris Korek writes, do you think Boba Fett was a nod to fans, or do you think we'll see more of him? Oh, I think we'll see more of him.
No, yeah, that's not a nod to fans for sure.
No, and as a matter of fact, go back to season 1. In the episode with Ming-Na, as her body is laying there at the end of the episode with Ming-Na, we see the boots step in. And so a lot of people think they have been laying a bit of a groundwork. I mean, look, the show is called The Mandalorian.
Right.
Right? This wouldn't be nostalgia porn to integrate Boba Fett because he's a Mandalorian. So...
And he needs him, right? Like,
maybe he does. Like that whole thing about Mando saying he needs to find more of his kind.
Yeah,
that might be able to point him in the right direction.
Right.
Maybe that is ultimately, this is going to be a long way around path that Mando eventually has to circle back and find Boba, and Boba's the one who might be able to point him in the direction of where Yoda's people are.
Mm-hmm. Just seems really odd to leave the episode with that scene, only to not see him again. And I asked you this in terms of what your theories were, why he looked the way he looks. He looked maybe upset, maybe pondering something.
I think he's just serious.
Serious?
He's Boba Fett. He's serious, honey. He's serious. Serious Boba Fett. All right. Let's move on here. But yes, I do think we're going to see him again. And I do think we're going to see him again this season. Because I think it's integrated into the story. Let's see. We are now at Jacob Silvers, who writes, Mando kicking Baby Yoda out of the way in the beginning was awesome. Yeah, it was. But remember, that's not the first time that's happened, right? He's done that before, where he has had to like whip Baby Yoda's little cradle around to stay out of harm's way. But yes, doing that very viscerally with the kick to get him out of harm's way was actually really, really cool. Do
you get the vibe that he, now that he understands a little bit about Baby Yoda, that he's less, what do you call it? Like, coddling of him?
He doesn't think he's as fragile as he used to?
Yeah, I feel like a little bit, because it seemed like there's a lot of parts of the episode where I'm like, oh, Baby Yoda's just like on his own outside. Would he normally have left him outside like that?
That's a good point. Although remember when they were flying off near the end action sequence, he turns to Marshall and says, take care of the kid.
Right.
And then go, but still you're right. I mean, Baby Yoda's in the little satchel of the speeder bike and him and Marshall just take off leaving him there.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that little thing saved my life from the charging rhino.
Yeah, I think he'll be all right.
Probably handle himself. Yeah, he's probably still protected, but you're right. I didn't really pay attention to that. He's probably subtly a little less precious with him at this point. I'm going to keep my eye open for that in the next couple of episodes. All right, let's keep going here. Suthius writes, was surprised to see John Leguizamo in the credits. I was like, who was he? I'm assuming he was a Cyclops dude at the beginning. Loved Marshall. I'll be honest with you.
I don't know.
I'm still not sure whether he was that first guy that Mando killed at the beginning, or if he was the bartender.
I don't. Yeah, it was in
know.
order of appearance, and it says his name first, so I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't know. Could have been either. But I mean, look, you had Jason Sudeikis as a stormtrooper. I think you're probably now that Mandalorian is so popular, I'm not going to be surprised at all if we start seeing more and more celebrities do these hidden behind a mask.
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing. It's like the bartender. We were both like, that voice sounds so familiar. It had to have been somebody.
Okay, let's move on here. Next up is, where did we leave off? We left off with Suthius. So the next up is Casinema Reviews, who writes, I heard some people say that that Olyphant's character was introduced in one of the Aftermath novels. I heard some people saying that too. I read one Aftermath novel. I didn't like it. I didn't go on to the rest of them, so I don't really know. Novels. JJ is cringing at acknowledgement of canon. I guess. I don't know. I read some people saying there was a reference to that, or maybe it might have been a character in one of those novels. I gave up on those novels personally, so I don't know firsthand, but it wouldn't surprise me terribly. It wouldn't surprise me terribly if they did that. Okay, let's see here. That's a good, thanks for pointing that out, Casinema. Next up, we've got Smoke and Mirrors. Just sends in a super chat to be supportive. Thank you, Smoke and Mirrors. Appreciate that. Casinema Reviews writes, who else loved the pod racer speeder reveal? Oh yeah, that was cool. And the fact that Marshall's bike alone was like clearly just one of the engines from a pod racer at some point. So, and again, it wasn't like the brutal nostalgia porn in that horrible episode in season 1. They just made it naturally fit in to what it was they were doing. They actually took a little time and energy with that, and I appreciated that a lot. So that's well observed. All right. Nicholas Sergi writes, Boba escaped because Krayt ate Sarlacc. I mean, that could be the explanation. It's like there are no abandoned Sarlacc pits. There are if the Sarlacc's been eaten. Maybe that's it. I tend to believe more that Boba Fett just got out. Because look, if Mando can get swallowed up by the Krayt dragon and get out of him, why couldn't Boba, after being in there for about 15, 20 minutes, fight his way out and get out of the thing? So I don't know that they have to go too complex. I mean, I don't know. How do you think they're going to explain him getting out of there?
Are they, though? Or do they even?
Or do they even have to?
Yeah, do they even have to? I mean, if this is picking up however long after, is there even a reason to? That's
a good point. That's a good point. All right, let's see. RA's Reviews writes, I love seeing it go full IMAX at the end again. Did they need to do it? No. But it was fun. It was fun seeing Jon Favreau pulling that out and using that thing, because obviously he's seen that done in movies and he loves it. And to take the opportunity to do that at the end there, it was really fun to see. All right, Plot Twisters writes, Mando apparently speaks Tuscan pooch lingo. Well, again, if he had spent enough time on Tatooine and been around enough Tuscan Raiders that he knows their language, he probably knows how they communicate with their dogs. I mean, really, that is the least suspension of disbelief thing out of the whole thing.
Right.
I mean, what's harder to believe? That he's learned somebody's entire language, or that he knows what to say to their pet? Learning their entire language seems harder to me.
Yeah, agreed.
So, but I'm not. But at the same time, when he first started doing it, I'm like, come on, how does he know to do that? It's like, oh, that's right, he's been here. And then they explained even further with his familiarity with the Tuscan Raiders. So then that was all fine to me. All right, let's see here. Luke1234 writes, was that an egg orb the Tuscan Raiders pulled out? Again, my initial thought was that it was. But as somebody pointed out earlier, it could be like a pearl that can then be used for something. It was clearly very valuable to them, and it seemed way too small for an egg.
Small, yeah.
Because that egg of the rhino creature was like 4 times bigger than that thing's egg. And the Krayt dragon was like 100 times bigger than that thing was. So that seems to make more sense to me. So, but they may never touch on it again. They may just put that in there as a fun little Easter egg, probably, and they're probably just going to leave it alone from there on out. Let's see. Richard K. writes, love this episode. Great start to the season. Makes me excited to see what happens next. Oh, and did you hear Khabib has retired now? Well, I mean, if you follow me, you know I talked a lot about that. But guess what? it looks like Khabib isn't retired. Dana White said he talked to Khabib and he thinks Khabib is going to come back for one more because Khabib's dad always wanted him to go 30-0. And right now he's 29-0. So anyway, about that. But yes, great start to the season. The only thing that I don't like about the 1 hour length, the roughly 1 hour length of this episode, is that if they do now go back to like the 30-minute episodes, which they're probably, I don't know, but they're probably going to do, it's going to feel really short.
Yeah.
Like if they had started with a 30-minute episode and then next week was an hour, it would have felt so long. If they do switch back to 30-minute episodes, which I'm expecting they will, I don't know, but I expect, it's going to feel kind of short. Especially after this great epic beginning to it, but we'll see what happens. All right. Where are we at? We are at Richard K writes. Oh, sorry. I lost Richard K. Where did he go? There he is. Richard K writes. Will we, Ahsoka and Moff Gideon go at in a lightsaber fight going forward? Wording. You probably meant, will we see Ahsoka and Moff Gideon get into a lightsaber fight going forward? Or do you think her sabers, probably meant sabers, and his dark saber would be a battle to see? I don't know. Listen, one of the things you got to understand for people who are fans of the Ahsoka Tano character, I am obviously not one, but for those who are, you got to understand, keep your expectations checked. She's only going to be in one episode this season. She's only going to be in one episode. And I think it's episode 5, but I've heard somebody say that it's actually episode 6. So I'm not 100% sure it's either episode 5 or episode 6. I do not expect to see her into a lightsaber fight with Moff Gideon. Number one, just because Moff Gideon has the dark saber does not mean he's got nearly the skills to combat a Jedi or a former Jedi, whatever the case may be. So I wouldn't expect to see some big grand duel. I just don't expect to see it. I don't expect to see it. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I expect to see lightsabers at all.
That's where my mind was going is, I mean, we saw one obviously last season, but is it getting to that point where they would introduce it in this season?
I don't know. I don't think so, but we'll see. All right. But I am excited to see Gideon again. I love Giancarlo Esposito.
Yeah.
He's so good. I am looking forward to seeing him again. All right. Let's see here. Next up, we've got Rickenman85, who writes, one thing that I hate about the show is the crappy HDR they have decided to use. The lack of deep blacks and high brights makes everything feel like it isn't even outside on Tatooine. I don't know if I agree with that. See, one of the amazing things about this stagecraft screen that they use to shoot this show is that I've always been floored that it's always fooled me. Mm-hmm. Like it always fools me. And so I have personally never felt like I was noticing a lack of high dynamic range. By the way, I don't know that they shoot this thing in HDR anyway. A lot of stuff isn't shot in HDR. So, I mean, there's that. But I don't know that I've ever considered it visually. I've never noticed anything. No. Have you ever been looking at it and thought visually just kind of felt off?
Not yet. Not yet. So then when we watched the making of The Mandalorian, I was always so surprised to see that all of them, right? All of them are shot inside. Most of them. But yeah. Almost the whole show was shot in the side.
I
don't have that keen eye though. So maybe that's like not my opinion to give, but I've never noticed.
But I like Rick and Man that you're looking for that that you've got your eye looking out for that sort of thing. I like that. All right. Sean Stewart writes, why did Mando kill the light when leaving the mob boss? Looks like creatures with red eyes came out in the darkness to kill him. I mean, I could be wrong about this. My assumption was that those creatures are nocturnal and they stay out of the light. And so by killing the light, he was letting those animals come in and kill the mob boss. Mm-hmm. Reminding us once again, Mando is a killer. Yeah. If you guys know otherwise, speak it down in the live chat so we can see. But I think that was my assumption. The first time it happened, my assumption was, oh, he killed the light, so it's dark, so those animals can come out. Because I felt like maybe they couldn't come into the light, but he did that to kill him. All right, next up. We've got Senior Film Rights. Timothy Olyphant's character is already my favorite secondary character. Just after this one episode, I hope he continues throughout the series. I love the character. Again, it's just that Timothy Olyphant cowboy character. I just really, really like the character. And oh my gosh, honey, it's after 5 o'clock. Do you have to get back to work?
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I'll let you slip out at this point, but just tell people where they can follow you on social media before you slip out.
Yeah, you guys can follow me at Ann Campea. I'm on Instagram, Twitter. Also have a cosplay Instagram and cosplays. And thank you for bringing in Baby Yoda. Appreciate that. See you guys.
Okay, thanks for being here, baby. All right, Anne's got to get back to work, and so do we. So let's keep on going with the questions you guys have sent in. Okay. Let's see, but I completely agree, Senior Film. I love this character already. I want to see more of him. I want to see him back. Let's see what happens. All right. Emmanuel Ericart writes, dude, I saw the ship from Hasbro. Just get it. Make puppy eyes to Anne and get it. It's just stunning. Just be looking for a good place in the background. Got it. I mean, Anne just told me about this Razor Crest, a $350 Razor Crest. I may have to get that damn thing. So I'm assuming, Emmanuel, you've either gotten your hands on it or you've seen it. Either way, I'm excited. I want to get my hands on it too. All right, Josh Bing writes, where'd Josh go? It's interesting how Mando says quested, not tasked. I noticed that too. Or charged, or I've been quested. I don't know why. That stood out to me as well. I thought that was kind of interesting. Next up, the Dano Channel writes, seeing R5D4 and the mechanic referring to as slow, hinting at him having a bad motivator. Well, listen, that is the R5 thing. Remember when I said that one of the things I appreciated about this episode, as opposed to that terrible episode in season 1 with the nostalgia porn, the one exception to that was the R5 appearance. It was pointless. It was just like, look, everybody, it's R5. And remember, when the camera angle started at the front of R5, so you could see R5, when the camera angle went then behind R5, you could see the one plate on its head had the extra scorch marks around it where the motivator blew in Star Wars A New Hope, right? So they made a point to do that, and I thought, okay, like everything else in the episode flowed perfectly, had a purpose for the story. The R5 thing was just nostalgia porn. I honestly could have done without it, but hey, whatever. But I did think it was interesting when they went to the back of the droid, you could see the scorch marks where the motivator once blew decades ago. All right, Mr. Bone 81 writes, you see the Sam Witwer cameo at 1307? I did not. It's because somebody was talking about some of the stuff before, and like Sam Witwer comes to mind. I did not know Sam Witwer had a cameo in it. Now I've got to go back and watch and look for the Sam Witwer cameo in there. Thank you for letting me know about that, Mr. Bone. I'm going to have to, I'm going to copy and paste this 1307. Give me a moment here. Okay, 1307. I'm going to go and look for that myself. Thank you for putting that on my radar, man. I appreciate that. Let's see. We are now at Main Man Cam 7 writes, I got major Jeepers Creepers vibes from that look of the bartender. Oh, yeah, the creeper. I didn't even think about that. You're absolutely right. Now, look, for those of you who don't know, there's this horror series called Jeepers Creepers. Yeah, the first one's great. So let's just talk about the first movie. Jeepers Creepers is great. It stars Justin Long. It's this great little horror film. And the main bad guy monster thing is something they just call the Creeper. And you're absolutely right, Main Man. I didn't even think about that. The bartender totally looked like he could have been the Creeper's cousin. I didn't even think about that. Good observation, man. All right, next up. Ron 6751 writes, hey, John, I'm not 100% sure Mandalorian will fight Boba Fett. I'm not 100% sure about that either. I don't necessarily think it's a likelihood that Mandalorian will ultimately fight Boba Fett. I think, look, understanding right now that Mando's quest is to find other Mandalorians who may have more information about Baby Yoda's species to point him in the right direction. I think ultimately Mando is going to be brought back to Boba for that specific purpose. Obviously, Boba Fett knows a lot about the Jedi and probably ain't none too fond of the Jedi. You know, after all, you watched a Jedi take his dad's head off. You know, therapy. But I do think that's ultimately now, whether that means they're going to come into conflict, I'm not saying they absolutely won't. But I'm with you in the sense that I'm not sure it's a sure thing that they will either. So it's going to be interesting seeing how they decide to utilize that moving forward, and whether they actually come to blows, or whether it's just a couple of dudes bonding. I mean, I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see for sure, but I cannot wait to find out. All right. Raphael Miranda writes, who remembers a Knight of the Old Republic video game mission of kill the dragon and get the pearl? Did Favreau and Filoni knew? Probably. Like I said, I didn't even think of it when I was watching the show. Didn't even pop into my mind. But I think that's probably a pretty clear Easter egg for people who did know about it. Because that one went right over my head till somebody mentioned it and think about. I thought it was a great observation. Absolutely. All right. Next up, Mark Campesen writes, John, you said you were told that Boba Fett was supposed to be in season 1. Since Timothy Olyphant was in the armor, that means the writing team has changed Boba's story since season 1 concluded. There's nothing that says that who we saw in season 1 in that Ming Na episode there's nothing that says that was Timothy Olyphant. We didn't see the armor, right? We didn't see the armor. So I'm not convinced one way or the other about that. So yeah, there's that. So I don't necessarily think there was any changes at all. Odds, because clearly Boba Fett is there on the planet. Boba Fett's there. He's on Tatooine. So we'll see what happens there. Just Plain Steve writes, odds we'll see another member of Yoda's race this season. The odds that we see another Yoda or Yaddle this season. I'm going to go 20% chance. A good solid 1 in 5 chance. So I don't think it's likely that we will. I think, okay, this is what my guess is, because I don't know how this season ends. My guess is the season ends with him getting concrete information about where he needs to go. But he doesn't necessarily find them yet. I don't know that though. So, but I'll give it a solid 20% chance, Just Plain Steve. Now, those are the odds, 1 in 5. That's the odds I'm going to give it, 1 in 5. All right, Darth Queso writes, that was Anakin's pod engines. It certainly looked like it. I mean, look, a lot of people drive, Honda Civics. A lot of people drive Toyota Camrys. It is very possible there's a lot of old pod racing engines that look just like that. Not to mention that if it was, and it could have been his, but if it was his, it's now like 4 decades old, 5 decades old, 6. I'm even losing track of time, but it's decades and decades and decades old. So I don't know if it was specifically the same one or if it was a similar one to that. Who knows? But it is possible. It certainly had the right look though. All right. Let's see here. Where did we go? Okay. We are now at Suthius, who writes, over under 40% Marshall dies before the end of the season. I'll go under 40%. Not impossible. I mean, how many times have we seen in a movie or TV show where the hero makes a friend just so the friend can die? Right? How many times have we seen that in a movie or TV show where the hero befriends somebody just so that friend can die and add extra motivation? So I think it's not likely that he dies. So I'll take under 40, but not by a lot. I think it's a solid possibility. That's a really good question. Okay, thanks, Suthius. Richard K. writes, I know you said Ahsoka is in 1 episode. Would live to see her... You probably mean love. Would love to see her school some fools, though, a bit. I like the Vader scene. One, I would live a scene... Sorry, Richard. I'm having... Guys, please be thoughtful as you're writing out. Just understanding somebody's got to read this. Okay. I know you said Ahsoka is in one episode. Would love, I'm guessing you're trying to write, to see her school some fools, though, a bit, like the Vader scene in Rogue One. I would love a scene where Ahsoka is I'm guessing you mean mangling some stormtroopers. Could be. I mean, look, you're talking to the wrong guy, though. I think Ahsoka Tano's a stupid character. So I know people hate it but I do. I think I would much rather, if you're pulling out characters from Dave Filoni's animated stuff, I would much rather see Sabine Wren. I would much rather see Hera. Those are the ones I like. But I don't know if we're going to see a big lightsaber ass kicking. I don't know. But I mean, at the same time, though, there's an argument to be made that if you're going to bring this Jedi character into the show for an episode, why not have some payoff, right? I mean, if you're going to bring in this character who can do all these things, wouldn't it maybe be a bit of a waste if you don't have her do some ass kicking? Maybe. I think there's an argument to be made for that. Again, I don't know that they're going to do that. I think it's going to be a little bit more subtle, but I don't know. So I don't think we're going to see that, but I think there's a good argument to be made that we should see that. So I don't know, Richard. We'll have to just wait and find out. We only got a few weeks. We got to wait before her episode. So let's see how it turns out. All right, next up. Where are we at here? We are at Noxum writes, do you think we will see a lightsaber in season 2? I don't think we're going to see a lightsaber in season 2. Dark saber notwithstanding. So just take the dark saber out of the conversation, because we're going to see the dark saber. Especially with Bo-Katan coming in. I don't think we're going to see an actual lightsaber. But listen, I'm not sitting here telling you that I know we're not going to see a lightsaber. I'm not saying that, because I don't know. But my guess is we won't. Again, just like that Ahsoka question, it seems like we should see some lightsaber action if you're going to have Ahsoka Tano there. If you're going to have Ahsoka there, it seems like it'd be a bit of a waste not to have her pull out some lightsabers and do some damage. But I got a feeling we're not going to see a lightsaber. Don't know that, though. Let's wait and see. Okay. Next up, Koba writes, I have a feeling Boba will be an ally, not an enemy. Yeah, somebody else was kind of mentioning that earlier, Koba. I tend to agree with you. Now, again, I don't feel 100% convinced of that. Like, I don't feel like it's a 100% certainty that we're going to see, Boba Fett and Mando become buddies. I'm not certain of that at all, but I kind of buy into that a little bit more than I do into the notion that the two of them are going to meet up and they're going to come to blows. So I agree with you, Koba. I agree with you. All right, next up, Ben Vernick writes, that Krayt dragon meat that Mando got looked like it could be this is exactly what I said to Ann when it happened. That Krayt dragon meat that Mando got looked like it could be the filet mignon. Do you think he grabbed that for food for the child or for trading? So it's the exact thing I said to Ann. When Mando got his own chunk of meat and put it there on the thing, I said to Ann, that looks like a big Ruth's Crisp cut of filet mignon. I think that was totally the filet mignon. I think he took it for food for the journey. Because that's like, a month's worth. That's a month's worth of food right there. So my guess is, he very well could have been taking it for trading. Because, what would Krayt meat be worth? Maybe a lot. But I have a feeling he was just wrapping it up and taking it so he could have rations. I don't know. That's just my guess. But I had the exact same thought, Ben. I had the exact same thought. All right. Next up, we've got Richard K. writes, with this being after Return of the Jedi, do you think in future seasons we will start seeing mentions of the First Order and Snoke and Kylo? Even if we don't see them, I'm sure they will be mentioned. I don't think so, actually. I really don't. Because remember, this is in the early years after Return of the Jedi. we're still a ways off from when the First Order really comes. If you look at the Leia novels that we got, which are Star Wars canon, if you look at those and the timelines in those, we are still actually kind of removed from anything like that coming along. So no, I honestly feel pretty safe in saying no, unless Mandalorian goes like 10 or 11 seasons, I really don't think we're going to get mentions of Snoke or the First Order. There might be some things that get dropped, hinting that the remnants of the Empire are trying to reorganize and stuff like that. Obviously, Gideon wants Baby Yoda for a reason. Maybe there's a connection to the Emperor. But as far as overt, explicit references to things we get in the sequel trilogies, like Kylo Ren, who's not even born, or the First Order, I don't think so. I feel pretty confident that we won't. But then again, this is Star Wars. Anything can happen. All right. Let's see here. Next up. Where'd we go? That was Richard. Koba now writes, loved what Mandalorian is doing with the Sand People. I agree. I mean, look, if you're going to... Rob kind of made mention to this earlier, and so did I, but if you're going to start taking in all these different elements that are part of nostalgia, why not use them for something? And then why not take that opportunity to expand on our understanding of that something, right? Like, if you want to use the cantina, instead of just going, look, everybody, it's the cantina from the first Star Wars. Isn't that cool? Instead of doing that, make the cantina a central figure of what's happening in the story and expand our understanding of what that cantina actually is or something like that. That's what they did with the Sand People in this episode, right? They gave us a deeper look at the Sand People than anything else Star Wars has ever done. We now know a little bit more about their culture. We now know a little bit more about their code. We now know a little bit more about their language. I mean, they use this nostalgia element of the Tusken Raiders, and they expanded our understanding of them while using them as an important piece of the narrative of the story of the episode. It was perfect. So I'm completely with you on that, Koba. I thought it was great that they used it that way. All right, Ash J writes, a Krayt Pearl is seen as a symbol of bravery to Tusken Raider culture, so you can see why they were so thrilled to find one. It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. And it's funny that you mentioned that, Ash J, because once again, that kind of feeds right into what Koba was just talking about, you know, how they use Tusken Raiders, do things that expand our understanding or imagination a little bit with the characters. It was a great use case. It was an absolute great use case, and I think it's a really good thing you pointed out. All right, Briggs 6262 writes, Prime Minister Almec of Mandalore in season 2, episode 12 of Clone Wars told Obi-Wan that Jango was a common bounty hunter and no Mandalorian. What's that mean for Boba? It means that Boba probably is a proper Mandalorian, because remember, Mando himself, like, Mandalorian isn't a race, right? Mandalorian isn't a race. So just as Mando himself was adopted into the Mandalore, I believe the same is probably true. I don't know this for fact, but I believe the same to be true for Boba. I believe Boba is a true Mandalorian. Don't know that. We'll find out. We'll see where that goes. All right. Double Crit writes, over under 20% Mando gets killed by Ahsoka. Mando, the Mandalorian, dying in episode 5 of season 2 in a show called The Mandalorian. I think that's a big negative there. I think that's a big negative. I think that's a pretty big negative. I don't think that is going to happen. No, Mando will not get killed by Ahsoka, so we're going to go way, way on the under of that. And with that, guys, that is all the questions today. We've got through all your questions. I thought this was going to be like 45 minutes. Instead, it was like closer to an hour and a half. Guys, let me know. Ann and I are planning on doing this every Friday while The Mandalorian is on. If you think that's a good idea, let me know. If you don't think it's necessary, let me know that too. Maybe you didn't think this was worthwhile. I had a lot of fun doing this, though. Again, for me, just couldn't have been. And by the way, I said this on this morning's John Campea Show too. When the episode ended, I was like, who directed this episode? Who directed this episode? And then waited for the credit. Jon Favreau. Totally makes sense that Jon Favreau directed it. Just a great way to start the season. I cannot wait to see where they go from here. Yes, I loved it. I just loved this episode so much. And I cannot wait. Again, I'm going to feel a little empty once they drop back to like half-hour episodes because we got spoiled with this episode, but whatever. More Mandalorian coming in a week, guys. Thanks for joining me here, guys. Hey, listen, if you haven't done so already, if you're just visiting us here for Mandalorian Talk, we do a talk show every day, Monday through Friday in the mornings, talking about all things movies and streaming and TV. Make sure you go and subscribe to this channel. Just subscribe to the channel and keep you up to date on all the stuff that we got going on here. And again, guys, don't forget, let's do this again next week as we talk about The Mandalorian. That will do it for me for now, guys. Thanks a lot for being here, my friends. My name's John Campea, and until next time, everybody, this is